Hello, and welcome to the Other Minds podcast. I'm Joseph Bohegan. You're listening to the music of today's guest, Kristin Norderval. Other Minds, founded in 1992 in San Francisco by Charles Amerkanian and Jim Newman, is devoted to championing the most original voices in new and experimental music. On Season 5 of the podcast, we're talking with a range of composers, performers, and authors across the field of new music, including the featured composers from the 30th Other Minds Festival, which will take place October 8th to 11th, 2026, at the Brava Theater in San Francisco. Performer, composer, and improviser Kristin Norderval's repertoire spans the Renaissance to the avant-garde, and her credits as a soprano soloist include performances with the Oslo Sinfonietta, Philip Glass Ensemble, and the San Francisco Symphony. As a composer, she combines her operatic lineage with electronic experimentation, placing emphasis on small-scale opera, cross-disciplinary work, and interactive technology. Norderval will perform with Elizabeth Gaver on Night 3 of this year's Other Minds Festival in San Francisco. Welcome to the podcast, Kristin. Since this performance is taking place in San Francisco, you're no stranger to the Bay Area. You earned a master's degree from the San Francisco Conservatory, studying voice with Donald Stenberg, who we're reissuing a recording of on the Other Minds record label later this year. What kind of repertoire were you singing when you were studying with him?
Oh, I was singing opera, but not as much traditional romantic opera. So I sang the lead in Les Mamelles de Thérésias, Poulenc. And I worked with the early music people, members of Baroque Philharmonia, working with Laurette Goldberg, which is amazing. And I sang a lot of things that I really loved. I did the Chant de Cantaloupe, and I was arranging things too for myself. Even though it was in a time when I was sort of on a pause from composing, there were some exceptions that I made, like the lesbian and gay chorus of San Francisco asked for a piece, and I wrote some pieces on Dickinson poems to commemorate people and friends that had died in the AIDS epidemic.
Could you talk about the impact that Stenberg had on you as a singer?
Oh, wow. Huge. Stenberg was amazing. I've called him a natural Zen teacher. I went and I sang for a lot of different teachers when I moved to the Bay Area. I was moving with my then partner, Monique Bouzarte, the trombonist. I was looking for a new voice teacher, and I sang for a lot of people. And my sense, as soon as he heard me sing and we did one lesson, was this man just listens so carefully, so detailed. And he was really the person who got me to understand the concept of observing without judgment. That was something that I'd already been, trying to figure out in my counseling sessions, my therapy sessions. How do you accept something and not beat yourself up or not say, I don't agree with this, or, whatever. Okay, but you have to accept that it's a reality and to observe whatever was going on, but not in a judgmental way, because if you were judgmental, you don't have the opportunity to move in the direction that you really want to go. You're already putting up a block. And he was it's so kind, so rigorous. That was a beautiful thing to be allowed to understand all the nuances of vocal performance, where something is being stretched slightly rhythmically, where the consonants maybe come before or after because of the artistic intent, where a glissando or just a portamento makes something different, but where you need it where you don't want to have it, all these tiny, tiny details. And then in terms of the technique also, if we do very slow scale exercises and listen, okay, how does this change in pitch and frequency, change the harmonic sense, the timbre of this? Do you want to go there? Do you want to have that? Or is it unchosen? So there's always this looking at very many different elements and figuring out what you could choose to do or what you were just kind of falling into because you didn't have the technical capacities to do otherwise.
And as you started getting back into composing, how did this classical training inform your work, either composing for voice or singing music of other contemporary composers?
In both situations, I was always drawn to people who had this combination of rigor and risk. And
could you explain what you mean by that?
I mean, some kind of fundament that has really taken a lot of time and effort to build, where you've gone deep into a structure, whether it's your instrument, your voice, your composing, your electronic exploration, deep exploration, which is what I'm talking about when I talk about rigor, so that you really understand that thing so fully, and then the risk to throw it all away or to go, a completely different direction and not worry about doing it wrong. Yeah, having that fundamental technique in something. It doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be opera. I mean, it wasn't like I have an idea that this is the one way to sing or compose or anything like that. It's just the appreciation of deep exploration, and then the deep exploration both of the thing itself, but then the deep exploration of taking it on a journey that is the unknown journey, being willing to risk. Mm-hmm.
Let's listen to an excerpt of From the North, performed by Kristin Norderval with her expanded vocal improvising instrument live in Vienna in May 2025. I know that you split your time between Norway and the US. What has your experience been like moving between those two musical cultures in New York and Oslo?
They're pretty different. Norway had a much more of a kind of a connection to Darmstadt, to Germany, to the sort of academic European composers. So it's only very, very recently that minimalism, not to even mention post-minimalism, has come into the Norwegian landscape. So what my work with Phil Glass, with singing stuff by Steve Reich, my extensive work with Pauline Oliveros, people didn't really have a context for that in Norway.
Were they receptive to it when you brought that kind of work to Norway?
Not always, no. Sometimes it was. I remember I would laugh because I'd get sometimes these comments like, "Oh, you're so brave. You have a melody." You know? I was like, "What do you mean?" Yeah, but there are an incredible number of very amazing players and amazing composers doing really interesting things. There are a lot of people that have been kind of off in their own world, building sort of their own language, and then maybe they get known, maybe they don't, but they kind of stay with it, which is really impressive. I like that.
Do you feel more at home in the musical scene of either place?
I feel like New York was my definite musical home. It's where I did most of my performing. I mean, I came to New York in '87, and I was, working right away in the sort of the downtown scene and the Bang on a Can folks and a lot of different composers there. So privileged to work with, people, Anea Lockwood, Anne LeBaron, and just fabulous people, David Lang, and lots of good stuff. Lots of women that were feminist oriented, also lesbian feminists. That was a big thing for me. I was like, wow, I'm not alone. So,
how did working with that community affect the music that you were making?
In New York, I started to dare to do things that were more theater-based, but that was partly because there was community support and partly because we were in a political time after 9/11 where it needed to happen. There wasn't a repertoire that I felt like was going to give me the voice that I wanted to have, so I had to create it. But there were a lot of people that were there to create with, so besides Monique and Zanana, I created with Catherine Librovskaya, partner to Phil Niblock, video artist, and Jill Sigmund, choreographer. I've been working with her for over 20 years now, almost 25. And Ensemble Pi was very much in the forefront of looking for new sort of socially conscious work. That was important to have kind of an energy and a feeling like, this is something that we do and we should be doing.
Do you see the same thing happening now? I would venture to say that we are, again, in a political time.
We definitely are in a very, very, very political time. And I think I see two different things. I see there's more fear, but there's also more understanding how important it is to continue, to resist and to do, to express. Some of the stuff that I was working with after 9/11, I did get comments like, oh, well, you're singing to the choir, you're preaching to the choir. If I was doing works about the problems of surveillance, right, or the problems of torture, we were already not following the international rule of law after 9/11. And I think now there is a deep understanding of how important that is, and it's definitely not. You have to assemble the choir. You have to assemble the choir so that the choir can go out and be in the streets or do the strikes or do the, organizing with representatives and push for things so that it's not going the way it's going.
Let's listen to an excerpt of Act 2 of The Trials of Patricia Isasa, composed by Kristin Norderval with libretto by Naomi Wallace. created what you've named the expanded vocal improvising instrument, which you mentioned, which is for gestural electronic processing of your own voice. What were you trying to do with your performances that existing technologies didn't allow for, and what did the AV make possible?
The biggest thing that it made possible was independence from the screen, which I think is a really interesting thing right now, because we're all like, whoa, we got, looking at the screen all the time, and the kids are looking at the screen, and everybody's, it's one of our prisons. But anyway, I wanted to design something that I could work with, move in the space, not be tethered by cables. So it had to be wireless, and that I could do the processing in a haptic way, where I feel how I'm processing and I sense with the sound coming back, and I could remember, okay, what have I put in there and how do I manipulate it? So some of the design, it's all mapping. I mean, the gestural thing is a commercially available MIDI ring. I didn't do that part. But the mapping design is all a design of figuring out how can I sample in such a way that I can move the sound within that matrix, and that I can have variable delay feedback units. My longest delays are well over a minute, and my shortest can be, I could program it much more than a minute, but I haven't ever done too much more than a minute. It's a long time already. And I can program it down to, 30 milliseconds or 80, whatever. So those get very different kinds of responses, and I can make things that are more effects or more really long non-synchronous loopings, or moving very quickly between very short and very long. So then I've got this sort of weave, this overlapping thread that is coming back in unpredictable ways.
As you were designing this AV, was there anything that was a surprise, like, oh, I didn't expect it to do that, but you really liked it, or something that became a challenge to overcome?
The surprises were that I can't necessarily always count on this, but I know if I sample in a certain amount and leave some space, and I go searching for the results where I've messed with it, I can maybe find the overlaps where I get some chords. And they're unpredictable chords, for what parts has it sampled from, right? The challenges are really the challenges of there's only 3 switches on each ring. So even though they're programmed to recognize hold, press, double click, and trigger, and that's 9 functions, then there's only so much I can remember.
You could have a ring on each finger, and then you have
many
options of buttons. I
really have to work on my memory. Yeah.
You'll be performing on night 3 of this year's Other Minds Festival with Elizabeth Gaver using your AV system. Tell us about what the audience can expect to hear at this performance.
Elizabeth plays Hardingfele, the Hardanger fiddle, and also Rebek. She was a wonderful, wonderful medieval fiddle player, performed with sequencia. So the instruments itself, the Hardingfele has resonant strings. So that is almost sort of an electronic sound in itself. It gets really interesting kind of harmonic things. And when she's using extended techniques, other kind of bowing techniques than you would expect for a medieval fiddle piece, then, she's getting really interesting sounds. And if I'm processing it, it extends that. So it's a play between her acoustic electronic sounds and my electronic acoustic sounds, if that makes any sense. Because we both have experience with medieval music, and we're quite drawn to the kind of circular forms, the small motives that return in different ways, we find an ease at improvising together, where we're playing off of these motivic changes. And she's a really good listener to hear what is going on with my vocal improvising and pick up on that.
And are you bringing in any of the traditional Hardanger fiddle tunes or any Norwegian kind of tunes into it?
Elizabeth has been exploring some of that, but I don't know how much people will recognize. I mean, it's small motives that can be then used in a different way. But yeah, there's the roots of things, those sort of, what I call them, like small little ingredients for the stew. The thing that I'm really experiencing these last couple years is feeling like how important it is to reclaim a commons, and how the unique thing of just being together in a same space and dedicating time to listen and sound it's hugely important, because we're so fractured in all these other ways, and we're so isolated and sent off into our little, pods. And so I feel like in each space, when I'm working this way with some things that are kind of familiar or pre-worked in terms of the way of working, but there's not anything that is completely set, because it can't be with the Abbey. It's automatically an improvising system. You can set the types of intention you want to do, but you can't set the results. And so in each of these performances, it's even more interesting to go into this feeling of, who are we here? Where are we now? What is the feeling of now? What's the energy in the room? What does it need? And where can it go? That's how Elizabeth and I have been working. And it's really interesting for me that, she's worked with other improvisers, but she does feel the feedback I get from her is that working with my way of processing her sounds is different, and it makes her listen differently. And that's my whole excitement too, because that's what I have to do in working with the AV, is I'm constantly listening, what am I getting back? What did I put in? What do I remember? How does this create a structure? Or, how can I play with it? It becomes like this sort of physical material.
You've recently been involved with research around singers with Parkinson's and neuroplasticity. Would you talk about that work and how your own diagnosis has shaped your performance practice, if at all?
Yeah. Well, here's something that was funny, was that when I did my artistic research PhD at the National Opera Academy in Oslo to develop the expanded vocal improvising instrument, I got diagnosed at the end of my my period, actually concurrent with my disputas, with my orals, which was a little stressful. But I had been thinking, oh, this could be a possibility just from my own reading of different symptoms, various things that I've been reading. And I was like ticking off all the symptoms. So it was, in a way, it wasn't a surprise either. So I had developed a tremor during my stipendiat, during my PhD research project. And before I was noticing the tremor, I'd already worked in this concept of the random, weighted random, to give me the surprises. And then I was thinking, oh, well, that's interesting. I've designed this instrument to which it doesn't really matter if I have a tremor because I'm just adding another element of motion to the random weighted that gives me surprises. So I felt like I kind of had designed this, vocal prosthesis in a way, or improvising prosthesis. I don't know which way to put it. But the thing that I really noticed before I was diagnosed was that I was having a feeling like I wasn't opening my palate evenly. So when I would take in a breath, I could feel that it was harder to open on one side than the other. And there was stuff with difficulty with articulation, various things. And then Parkinson's is a weird disease because it's basically the loss of neurons that produce dopamine over time. This seems to be linked very heavily to air pollution, pesticides, toxic chemicals, forever chemicals. Probably in my case, the fact that I was, in a town in Canada for my teenage years that had 2 steel factories. That was probably the main thing, although there are other risk factors in my background as well. But that one was a pretty heavy one because manganese that comes out of steel factories is related to Parkinson's. The thing that I was noticing with this voice stuff and with this loss of dopamine, I didn't know that was why. But once I got diagnosed and started doing the medication, which restores your production, you're taking levodopa, which is stimulating production of dopamine by the neurons that are left, then I could start, oh, wow, I've got energy back. I can focus on the physical stuff. But there's still this thing that happens, which is that dopamine is needed for all these movements that are automatic, or rather, Parkinson's attacks the movements that are automatic. So breathing, swallowing, digestion, blood pulse, and blood pressure and rate, and all those things. And the things that we do that we've done so much that it comes automatically, like talking or walking, those are also really affected. So as a singer, I had to start thinking, oh, I've automatically learned to take really deep breaths, but now I have to think so specifically about them. Breathe, think about my diaphragm and think about my intercostals, like 1, 2. I have to think specifically and intend to breathe that big. If I'm thinking with my voice and my articulating, right now I'm talking, I have to think about what I'm saying and really speak with that intention so that it's not garbled and it's not, and it comes out, so that it has the focus. So the thing that is really interesting about the research on singers is that we know our instruments really well. So many of the Parkinson's patients will get, people that are living with Parkinson's, get voice disorder in some way or another, 80 to 90%, they say. And I'm thinking that if we start really doing this research they're doing dynamic fMRIs of the vocal apparatus to see what exactly is going on inside and to see also where are the brain roots when you're singing. And if we can really go as specifically into particular kinds of exercises for the voice as rigorous as all the physical activities that have been developed by dancers and physical therapists and athletes who are living with Parkinson's, then I think we can really make some enormous progress with voice rehabilitation as well. Intention is huge. It's huge. It goes through a different route in the brain if you're doing an intentional movement rather than an automatic movement.
And would you talk about what you're doing now in the Netherlands? We're speaking in June, where you're speaking to us from.
I've been asked to be a work field supervisor for a PhD, artistic research PhD that Sharon Stewart is doing. And she's going to be looking at, it's a combination of deep listening, mindfulness, and creativity, and Parkinson's. So it's very interesting, combines my whole deep listening training with Pauline and my lived experience with Parkinson's, and I'm really looking forward to it. They've been doing a ton of really interesting research in the Netherlands about art in general and Parkinson's, both visual arts, theater, music, dance, and so it's very exciting to be part of this.
You can hear Kristin Norderval perform with Elizabeth Gaver at Other Minds Festival 30 on Saturday, October 10th, 2026 at the Brava Theater in San Francisco. Thank you, Kristin, for joining me today, and thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you so much.
This has been an episode of the Other Minds podcast, brought to you by Other Minds. Our 30th festival is October 8th to 11th, 2026 at the Brava Theater in San Francisco. Join us again next week.